Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video. In this one, I will showcase as well as discuss the ultimate best class setup for the PPSH 41 submachine gun here in Call of Duty Warzone. So of course guys, welcome back to a brand new Warzone best class setup video here on the channel. I must admit, it's been quite a little while since the last time that I made one of these videos. However, the reason why I want to talk about the PPSH 41, and that's just because last week at the time of me making this video, there was a significant weapon overhaul update in Warzone, buffing as well as nerfing some really notable submachine guns and assault rifles. And one of those weapons was of course the PPSH 41 submachine gun. And interestingly enough, in the current state of Black Ops Cold War, the PPSH is actually a really solid as well as top tier submachine gun in the game, boasting a fast fire rate, moderate damage, controllable recoil, and a competitive time to kill. And in many circumstances, the PPSH 41 is a quintessential submachine gun, being that the weapon really excels at those close range engagements, and it is honestly a lot of fun to use. So that's how come I wanted to check it out in today's video, as well as discuss the ultimate best class setup for it. So with that said, if you guys want to enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like on it down below, as well as subscribe and turn post notifications so that way you guys will not miss any of the latest and greatest Call of Duty news, class setups, and all kinds of things like that. So without further ado, now that I got the intro out of the way, let's dive right into it. And alright guys, so of course to kick off today's video, let's talk a little bit about the PPSH 41. Of course, the PPSH is a relatively new submachine gun in the game, being that it was added into the game with the release of Season 3. And of course, how you unlock this particular weapon is by making up to tier 15 in the Season 3 Battle Pass. And if you guys weren't already aware, the PPSH is of course a Black Ops Cold War weapon. Now on a quick side note over here, I do quickly want to mention that the PPSH in Black Ops Cold War as well as Warzone is very comparable as well as very akin to the PPSH 41 that we did end up seeing in Black Ops 3. So if you guys ever played Black Ops 3 and you ever used the PPSH 41 in that game, you'll have an idea as to how it will perform in Warzone and Black Ops Cold War. Now guys, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, last week the PPSH 41 did end up being buffed in Warzone, and I actually have the patch notes on my screen right now, and I'm going to be reading it off for you guys. Of course, in this particular patch, the maximum damage range of the PPSH was increased by 4%, and additionally, the open bolt delay was decreased by 80%. And they go on to state, we would like to push SMGs in different and interesting directions to distinguish them from one another. Ideally, we are providing a myriad of options within each weapon category that are supplementary to a multitude of diverse playstyles. In that vein, we're going to push the PPSH 41's identity in a way that continues to diversify it from its competition in meaningful ways. To us, the PPSH 41 is the quick-to-fire, high-capacity, short to mid-range SMG. Not every weapon needs to have the highest time to kill potential, but every weapon should at least feel viable and have a niche where it excels given a complementary playstyle. So that's quite a bit of information to unpack, and overall I would say that their goal to make the PPSH 41 a short to mid-range submachine gun was very effective, and of course, as they also mentioned in the article, one thing that they want to do is to give the PPSH a complementary playstyle, and that's exactly what I did with today's class setup. Of course, in this particular class setup, I paired the PPSH 41 submachine gun with the CR56 assault rifle, which interestingly enough did end up getting a slight nerf with last week's update. However, one thing that wasn't actually nerfed about the CR56 is its long range potential, and because of that reason, it means that the PPSH 41 can excel at those close to medium range engagements. However, for those medium to longer range engagements, you can always switch over to CR56 AMAX and absolutely dominate at all ranges. So with that said, without further ado, now let's actually dive right into the class setup, which is on your screen right now. So let's talk a little bit about it and do a brief rundown. Of course, my primary weapon, I will be using the standard variation of the PPSH 41. Now if you guys would like to use any blueprint, feel free to go ahead and do so. However, I'm just going to be sticking with the standard version. Moving on down, for my secondary weapon, I will be using the legendary confession variation of the CR56 AMAX. However, if you don't have this particular blueprint, it's really not too big of a deal. You can just use the standard version. Moving on down, of course, for my perk setup, I will be using EOD Overkill and Battle Hardened, and then for my lethal, I will be using the throwing knife, which is extremely useful and is kind of the meta lethal in the current state of Warzone. And of course, my tactical, I will be using the heartbeat sensor. So that said, now let's talk a little bit about the attachments I am going to be running on my PPSH 41. Of course, my first attachment, I will be using the GRU suppressor, which will be increasing the sound suppression, vertical recoil control, bullet velocity, as well as effective damage range. Overall, this particular attachment really packs a punch and will allow us to be a little bit more effective when using this weapon, because as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, the PPSH really excels at those close to medium range engagements, and of course once you put on this attachment, it's just gonna help it out a little bit at those longer ranges well within the effective range of this particular weapon. So with that said, now let's move on to our next attachment. That's of course going to be the 14.9 inch Ranger barrel, which will be significantly increasing the bullet velocity. Now this particular attachment is really useful as it will make this weapon attachment feel a little bit more like hit scan, and more importantly, the only downside of this particular attachment is the aim walking movement speed, because back when I was trying to find the most optimized class setup for the PPSH 41, I tried some different barrels, for example the 15.7 inch Task Force barrel, and let me just say it is really good. However, unfortunately, the recoil really starts to become kind of uncontrollable when you're using that particular barrel, so that's what come from my own experience. I prefer the 14.9 inch Ranger barrel. So yeah, with that said, now let's move on down to the third attachment. That of course will be the Spetsnaz grip, which will simply be increasing the vertical recoil control as well as the horizontal recoil control. Next attachment is going to be the 55 R&D drum magazine, which of course will be increasing the ammo capacity of this weapon up to 55 rounds, and this is extremely useful because since the PPSH has an extremely high fire rate, it means you are going to be absolutely burning through ammunition, so using a magazine attachment is an absolute must on this weapon. And personally, I like using the 55 R&D drum magazine, as naturally it will be increasing the magazine size up to 55 rounds, which is very sufficient when it comes to taking out multiple opponents with the PPSH 41. However, it's not going to be decreasing our movement speed like some other attachments, as well as aesthetically speaking, it looks really good because of course if you guys ever play Call of Duty World at War, you would know how much of a classic it is to be running the drum magazine on the PPSH 41, so that's why I will be using it. And alright guys, so of course moving down to the fifth and final attachment, I will be using the Serpent Wrap, which will be simply increasing the aim down sight time, and it's extremely useful as when you are using the submachine gun in Warzone, it's going to allow you to get your iron sights up as quickly as you possibly can. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, I am of course going to be pairing the PPSH 41 submachine gun with the CR56 AMAX assault rifle, and the class setup that I am going to be using on my AMAX is going to be the monolithic suppressor, the XRK Zodiac S440 barrel, the VLK 3x optic, the Commando foregrip, as well as the 45 round magazine. And yeah, I must say overall this particular class setup is really top tier. You can use the PPSH 41 so that way you can perform very well at those close to medium range engagements for submachine gun of course, and then for those longer range engagements you can switch on over to the CR56 AMAX, which excels at those longer range engagements, especially after last week's patch. So yeah guys, with that said, that's gonna effectively wrap up today's video. I hope you went on to enjoy it, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like on it down below, as well as subscribe and turn post notifications so that way you guys will not miss any of the latest and greatest Call of Duty news, class ups, and all kinds of things like that. So once again, that's gonna effectively wrap up this video. I'm your host Deeper Jungle, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Target eliminated.
Thank you.